To this day, Forrest Gump is revered for its heartfelt storytelling and memorable moments. Behind its iconic scenes and captivating performances lie a wealth of stories that add depth to our understanding of the film. From the real-life inspiration behind Forrest's epic cross-country run to the creative decisions that shaped its most memorable lines and sequences, Forrest Gump is a treasure trove of fascinating trivia. Most notably, there's this one huge blooper in Forrest Gump that nobody noticed until now. There's a lot to unpack, so let's get started. Number 20. Lieutenant Dan's Disability. One of the most memorable characters in Forrest's Lieutenant Dan Disability Gump is Lieutenant Dan, played by Gary Sinise. Dan loses his legs during the Vietnam War, but how did they show that on the big screen? Well, this was a technical achievement that relied heavily on visual effects. To convincingly depict Sinise's character as a double amputee, the filmmakers used CGI in a groundbreaking way for the time. Sinise wore blue fabric around his legs while sitting in a wheelchair, allowing the visual effects team to digitally erase his legs in post-production. This made it appear as if Lieutenant Dan truly had lost his legs, an effect that helped enhance the emotional impact of his character's struggles and transformation throughout the film. Gary Sinise's performance as Lieutenant Dan was widely praised, as he skillfully portrayed a man grappled with the loss of his identity as a soldier and struggling to find purpose in life after his injury. The special effects worked in harmony with Sinise's acting to deliver a portrayal that was both visually and emotionally convincing. The character's arc, from bitter and broken to eventually finding peace, resonated deeply with audiences and remains one of the most powerful elements of Forrest Gump. We've just scratched the surface here. There's a lot more from where that came. Number 19. Cameos. Forrest Gump is renowned for weaving its title character into key moments of 20th century history, and many of these historical interactions were achieved through digital imagery and creative editing. One such cameo involved Elvis Presley, who, as a young man, stays at Forrest's house and picks up dance moves from him. While actor Peter Dobson portrayed Elvis physically, including his signature hip-shaking movements, the voice we hear in the scene didn't belong to Dobson. Instead, the voiceover was provided by Kurt Russell. Interestingly, Russell had previously played Elvis in John Carpenter's 1979 biopic Elvis, a role that helped solidify his own acting career. In Forrest Gump, Russell recorded new lines that were seamlessly blended into the scene to make it appear as though young Forrest was influencing one of Elvis's most iconic traits, his hip-swinging dance style. The cameo is a clever nod to both history and Russell's connection to the King, yet was kept under wraps for over a decade. It wasn't until 2016, 12 years after the film's release, that Russell publicly confirmed his role in the cameo, revealing that director Robert Zemeckis had asked him to step in because the original voice track wasn't satisfactory. In a GQ interview, Russell recounted the story, explaining how Zemeckis approached him for help and how he agreed to do it, though he was unaware if the other actors even knew about the change. What made the situation even more intriguing was the irony that while Russell provided Elvis's voice for Forrest Gump, he hadn't done so in Elvis. In the biopic, singer Ronnie McDowell performed the vocals. The cameo remained a well-kept secret, which in today's age of internet spoilers will be nearly impossible to maintain. Number 18. Forrest and President Kennedy. Forrest and JFK, the blending of fictional and historical elements, is one of the film's most defining features, allowing viewers to witness iconic moments of U.S. history through the eyes of an ordinary yet extraordinary character. Forrest's meeting with President John F. Kennedy is one such instance where reality and fiction collide. In the film, Forrest is named to the All-America team and invited to the White House, where he meets JFK. However, this event is historically inaccurate, as the Associated Press did not announce its All-America team until December 6, 1963, 2 weeks after Kennedy's assassination. In reality, it would have been impossible for Forrest to meet JFK under these circumstances. Despite this inconsistency, the scene serves a greater narrative purpose. It creates a moment where Forrest's fictional accomplishments are juxtaposed against a significant historical event, allowing the film to offer a playful reimagining of history. By doing so, Forrest Gump highlights its theme of an unlikely hero whose life intersects with major cultural and political milestones, blending whimsy with reality in a way that underlines the fantastical yet touching nature of the story. The audience is drawn into the magic of Forrest's journey, knowing full well that it's fictional, yet still captivated by the seamless integration of these key moments into the character's life. This next one may not seem like much on the surface, but there is a deeper meaning here. Number 17. The Conserved Bench. The conserved bench-to-bench from Forrest Gump is a memorable piece of cinematic history, playing a significant role in the film's iconic scenes. Positioned in Chippewa Square, Savannah, Georgia, this unassuming fiberglass bench became one of the most recognizable movie props of all time. It was on this bench that Forrest, played by Tom Hanks, spent the majority of the film narrating his extraordinary life story to strangers waiting at the bus stop. Well, behind the scenes, the location was carefully selected for its picturesque surroundings, and the bench became the centerpiece of many key moments in the film. To capture the perfect scenes, the production team positioned the bench on the north side of Chippewa Square, with Forrest facing Bull Street. Interestingly, the local Savannah police had to reverse the flow of traffic around the square to facilitate the shots of Forrest being picked up by a bus, ensuring the scene aligned with the filmmaker's vision. During production, 4 identical benches were used, each playing its part in various shots of Forrest's reflective monologues. After filming wrapped, one of these benches was donated to the city of Savannah, where it found its permanent home in the Savannah History Museum. This bench has since attracted numerous visitors who are eager to see the exact spot where Forrest shared his tales. Although fans cannot sit on the bench itself, as it is preserved behind protective barriers, they can admire up close and even take part in a Forrest Gump film tour, which includes a visit to the famous square where the scenes were shot. The other 3 benches remain highly valuable collector's items, their whereabouts largely unknown. Like the ruby slippers worn by Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz, these props have been auctioned off at staggering prices. Despite its simple appearance, the bench has been immortalized in both cinema and the hearts of fans worldwide. Jimmy Carter's Heat Exhaustion Number 16. Jimmy Carter's heat exhaustion. Do you remember Forrest's famous 3-year run across the United States? Well, there is a small detail you may have missed. As Forrest sprints past a small-town barbershop, he overhears a news report on the TV, informing the public that President Jimmy Carter has suffered from heat exhaustion. This event, which occurred on September 15, 1979, in real life, is portrayed as a moment that captures Forrest's attention, adding a layer of historical relevance to his otherwise unpredictable journey. However, the movie's playful take on history leads to some discrepancies. According to the film's story, Forrest begins his epic run on what seems to be July 5, 1976, which is before Jimmy Carter assumed the presidency in January 1977. This creates a contradiction, as Carter wasn't yet president during the start of Forrest's run. This blending of timelines was done simply to insert Forrest into pivotal historical moments in a way that reflects his unintended yet significant influence on history. Next up is another behind-the-scenes fact you may not have known. Number 15. Gruesome shooting conditions. Gruesome shooting conditions during a panel at the New Yorker Live. Tom Hanks reflected on the physically and mentally grueling experience of filming Forrest Gump, one of the most iconic and emotionally significant sequences in the film, where Forrest runs across the country, required an immense amount of effort. Hanks described how this montage was not simply a matter of filming a few key moments in one location. Instead, the production team had to travel to various locations across the U.S. to capture the authentic beauty of different landscapes. This, as one could imagine, significantly added to the workload. Over the course of 27 consecutive days, Hanks had to repeatedly get into costume, run for several hours in different parts of the country, and then immediately fly to the next location to repeat the process. These cross-country scenes were physically exhausting, as they required constant movement and travel without much rest in between. The endless running sequences drained Hanks, and the accumulated fatigue took a toll on him. The demanding schedule for the running scenes left him with little energy for other important parts of the film, including the dialogue-heavy park bench sequences. These scenes, which became a cornerstone of Forrest's storytelling in the movie, were shot in just a day and a half. Despite being essential to the film's narrative, Hanks recalled how he was utterly exhausted by the time they filmed these scenes. He struggled to stay focused amid the oceans of dialogue he had to deliver. Speaking of his dialogue, did you notice his southern accent? Number 14. His southern accent. To capture the authenticity of his Southern accent Forrest's Alabama roots, Hanks had to perfect the Southern accent in a way that sounded natural and unforced. Interestingly, rather than relying on traditional dialect coaching, Hanks modeled his accent after the young actor who played the childhood version of Forrest, Michael Connor Humphreys. Humphreys, a Mississippi native, had a naturally soft Southern drawl, and Hanks took great care to mimic his speech patterns. This created a consistent voice for both the young and adult versions of the character. The collaboration between Hanks and Humphreys in developing the accent was instrumental in the film's success. Hanks' dedication to getting the accent right paid off, as the portrayal was not only critically acclaimed, but also earned him an Academy Award for Best Actor. Meanwhile, Michael Connor Humphreys' own performance was recognized with a Young Artist Award for his role as young Forrest. His authentic Southern accent and natural portrayal of the character's early years helped lay the foundation for Hanks' iconic performance. Number 13. No wages for Tom Hanks. Instead of receiving a traditional no-wages salary for his role in the 1994 blockbuster, Hanks chose to negotiate for percentage points, meaning he would receive a portion of the film's overall profits. This decision mirrored the character of Forrest himself, who displayed an intuitive sense of financial foresight throughout the movie. At the time, the film was a gamble. Although the production team and Hanks believed it had the potential to be successful, no one could have predicted just how monumental it would become. Forrest Gump went on to gross over $678 million worldwide, becoming one of the highest-grossing films of that year, thanks to his percentage points. Deal: Hanks reaped the rewards when the movie exceeded expectations. By the end of its box office run, it's estimated that he earned around $65 million, far more than he would have received through a standard salary. Prosthetic lip number 12. Prosthetic lip, Benjamin Buford Bubba Blue, portrayed by Michael T. Williamson, is one of the standout supporting characters in the film. Known for his distinctive speech and large bottom lip, Bubba is a key figure in Forrest's time in the Vietnam War and his shrimp business venture. However, the iconic look of Bubba, particularly his protruding lower lip, was not something Williamson naturally had. To achieve Bubba's characteristic appearance, the filmmakers used a prosthetic lip that gave his mouth a distinct, exaggerated shape. Creating this prosthetic took time and effort to perfect. The team wanted to make sure that Bubba's lips looked natural and believable, blending seamlessly with Williamson's face. Once the prosthetic was finalized, it worked so well that many people didn't realize it was fake. Michael T. Williamson's portrayal of Bubba, with his soft-spoken voice and obsession with shrimp, became a beloved part of the film, adding depth to Forrest's story. Despite the prosthetic lip, Williamson's performance shined through, making Bubba a memorable and endearing character whose brief yet impactful role left a lasting impression on audiences. Number 11. Almost like real life. The fictional Bubba Gump Shrimp Company, almost like real life in the film, which Forrest establishes to fulfill his friend Bubba's dream, has an interesting real-world counterpart. After the film's massive success, Paramount Pictures and the Rusty Pelican Restaurant Company capitalized on the iconic shrimping storyline by launching a chain of restaurants named Bubba Gump Shrimp Company. Since opening its first location in 1996 in Monterey, California, the restaurant chain has expanded globally, boasting over 43 locations in several countries. These restaurants offer seafood dishes, often with shrimp as a featured ingredient, and immerse guests in a Forrest Gump movie-themed experience, incorporating memorabilia and references from the film. Plus, in a curious twist of fate, actor Chris Pratt was discovered working at a Bubba Gump Shrimp restaurant in Maui, Hawaii, in the year 2000, before his rise to Hollywood stardom. His outgoing and humorous personality, while serving customers, caught the attention of a director who would later give him his first acting job. Now, on to the more serious details. Number 10. The war scenes. War scenes. Did you know that the war scenes in Forrest Gump, depicting Forrest's time in Vietnam, were actually filmed on a golf course in South Carolina? But wait, golf courses don't look like jungles now, do they? Extensive use of CGI played a crucial role in creating the dense jungle environment necessary for scenes. This digital enhancement helped simulate the lush, overgrown vegetation typical of the Vietnam jungle. To further enhance the tropical look and make the setting appear more authentic, Additional palmetto trees were brought in to augment the existing landscape. By combining practical effects with CGI and additional props, the filmmakers successfully transported audiences to the heart of Vietnam, despite the setting's unconventional origins. Two islands off the South Carolina coast, Fripp Island and Hunting Island State Park, were the primary locations for these scenes. Number 9. Stand in the Schoolhouse Door. Beyond the Vietnam War, the film weaves Forrest's stand in the schoolhouse door into the backdrop of pivotal moments in American history. One such event is the integration at the University of Alabama, a powerful moment in the civil rights movement. In 1963, Alabama Governor George Wallace infamously attempted to block two black students, Vivian Malone and James Hood, from enrolling. The film depicts Forrest as a football player at the university during this time. He witnesses Wallace's stand in the schoolhouse door as he symbolically attempted to prevent desegregation. In reality, this incident was a direct challenge to federal desegregation laws, and President John F. Kennedy sent federal troops to ensure that the students were admitted safely, much like how Forrest observes in the movie. The real incident involving Governor George Wallace's stand at the University of Alabama occurred on June 11, 1963, and was a key moment in the struggle for civil rights in the United States. In the early 1960s, the civil rights movement was pushing for the desegregation of public institutions and the protection of voting rights for black Americans. The University of Alabama, like many other public institutions in the South, was racially segregated. Governor George Wallace, a staunch proponent of segregation, attempted to block the enrollment of two black students, Vivian Malone and James Hood, at the University of Alabama. He also positioned himself physically in the doorway of the university's registration office, declaring his intention to prevent the students from entering. This act was intended to defy the federal court order that mandated the desegregation of the university. The standoff did not last long. President John F. Kennedy, committed to enforcing desegregation laws, responded to Wallace's defiance by sending in federal troops. The federal intervention was critical to ensuring the enforcement of the court order. U.S. Deputy Attorney General Nicholas Katzenbach, who was sent by the president, confronted Wallace and demanded that he step aside to allow the students to enroll. In a televised address that evening, President Kennedy condemned Wallace's actions and reinforced the federal government's commitment to upholding civil rights laws. Wallace eventually backed down, and Malone and Hood were able to enroll at the university with federal protection. The original Vietnam War sequences. Number 8. The original Vietnam War sequences. In the original script of Forrest Gump, the Vietnam War scenes took a darker turn, reflecting a real but now discontinued military practice. The script initially depicted every member of Forrest and Bubba's platoon as having low IQs, a nod to historical reality where soldiers with below-average intelligence were allowed to enlist during the Vietnam War. These individuals were often grouped together in the same platoon. This practice was intended to minimize potential issues by consolidating those with similar capabilities, though it was ultimately seen as a problematic approach. The U.S. Army, concerned about how this portrayal might affect their image, objected to this representation. Consequently, the film was revised to depict only Forrest and Bubba as being mentally challenged, while the rest of their platoon was shown as average soldiers. Despite this adjustment, Forrest Gump received a commendation for its depiction of the Vietnam War from military historian Bill Allison. Allison highlighted the film's surprising accuracy in portraying the chaotic and perilous nature of the war. He focused particularly on an ambush scene where Forrest rescues Bubba, noting that ambushes were a common tactic used by the Viet Cong to avoid direct confrontation and maintain concealment. Allison pointed out that the film's representation of such ambushes aligns with historical accounts, where American and ARVN soldiers often faced unseen enemies in dense, challenging environments. Additionally, the film accurately reflected other elements of the Vietnam War. For instance, the heavy rains experienced in Vietnam were portrayed realistically. The term humping, used in the film, was indeed a common military slang for walking or marching during the war. However, while Forrest Gump managed to capture some of the realities of war, it did so with a certain degree of lightness that detracted from the grim and prolonged nature of the conflict. The Vietnam War, the longest in U.S. history, was fraught with uncertainty and disillusionment, with many soldiers questioning the purpose of their involvement. Now, let's reveal a huge behind-the-scenes detail you never knew about. Number 7. Taking the kids to work. Taking the kids to work in the memorable scene from Forrest Gump where young Forrest boards a school bus. He faces rejection from 2 children before Jenny offers him a seat. What adds an interesting layer to this scene is that these 2 children weren't professional actors. The boy who turns Forrest away is Alexander Zemeckis, the son of director Robert Zemeckis. The girl who similarly rejects him is Elizabeth Hanks, the daughter of Tom Hanks. The scene is significant as it highlights a pivotal moment in Forrest's early life. On his first day of school, Jenny's act of kindness, offering Forrest a seat next to her, marks the beginning of a profound friendship. Forrest later reflects on this moment with deep affection, describing Jenny as like an angel and noting that he had never seen anything so beautiful in his life.